Okay, we are live for what seems like the first episode in a very long time of Two Wise Guys. This is an unscripted episode. My name's Chris, and I'm here with my co-host, Dan.
Hello.
So, yeah, we just had some free time. Well, I don't know if we had free time, but we just sort of got to talking that we hadn't done an episode in a while, and we weren't planning on doing an episode until I think the beginning of October. As far as the main show, where we're not so unscripted is concerned. But we wanted to do something here and just talk about how the summer's going and sort of catch up with each other. And we thought it would be interesting to do it as a live conversation. So Actually, just before we went live, Dan and I were talking about the weather, and I was telling him how in California, I live in Southern California, and I was just venting to him about our humidity here and the humidity that we've been experiencing recently. And it's been like 105. It was 105 degrees yesterday, and today was 98, and it's been just super humid. You don't even want to go outside. So it's just like the normal weather here, Dan, is like, it's like, we get like 80, 90 degree weather, but we never have humidity, which is what really sort of is the kicker. It doesn't even have to be very hot for humidity to just make you feel miserable. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's nice that you guys finally get some over there. I live in Columbia, South Carolina, for all of you who are not aware. And it's hot here like all the time in the summer, and it's super humid all the time. And I was actually telling Chris that it's actually surprisingly been relatively cool this summer compared to what it usually is. I remember just a few years ago, it was about a week-long stretch of 115, 120 degree days over here. And I think the highest I've seen this year has been like 103. And that was just for a couple of days. And actually, this next week, it's supposed to be in the low 80s. So I'm pretty excited over here. It's pretty fantastic.
You also made a comment about global warming. You were saying how the weather, you guys normally expect that hot weather over there, but you haven't really seen it the same way. Is that what you were saying? Or
yeah, just this year though, it's been interesting because it's not been super hot compared to what it usually is, and my perspective might have been skewed because I've switched to the third shift, the midnight to 8 o'clock shift at my job, and so I'm not out underneath that blazing ball of fire out there. So it's a little bit different, but it hasn't seemed, even when I'm out during the day, it hasn't seemed quite as hot as it usually is around this time of the year. It's gonna be pretty awesome. We're gonna be going camping next weekend up in the mountains in North Carolina, and it's gonna be high of 75, low in the high 50s. So it's gonna be wonderful, man.
That's great weather. I really love camping. I wish that I could do it more. When you have like a young family, as I do, it's tougher to get out and do things like that unless you can sort of, get a babysitter, or unless you're just willing to, haul everybody along with you, which
that's what you got to do. Just haul everyone along.
Yeah, I'm not really prepared to do that. At this point, we'll see. My wife's pregnant with our third child, so it's just like, getting her to do anything is she's coming up on 6 months, so she's starting to get a little bigger and stuff. So things are getting uncomfortable. So for her, as well as for me, but don't let her know.
Well, you've also got girls though. I've got 3 boys, and so it's a little easier to get them to go out in the woods and run around and get dirty and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. But I do think, as our daughters, I don't know. Our oldest daughter's 4, and I think she would really enjoy stuff. She likes to get outside, and I think everybody does, regardless of, gender or anything like that. But yeah, I guess there is sort of an inclination that for guys to want to go outside. I think as guys, you just kind of want to like get out, and I don't know if it's like be one with nature, but you just want to you want to feel like kind of tough or something like that. I don't know. Do something where you're like, yeah, I went out and camped and roughed it in my Winnebago. I don't know. Is that a guy thing, or is that, am I
the
wrong?
Winnebago? I don't think is a guy thing. I think that's a first world lazy person problem. But no, we like going primitive camping. We'll we go out and pitch the tent and gather firewood and everything. We start the fires from scratch. This year, I think we're going to bring some fire starter because last year the wood was pretty wet, so it was hard to get the fire going. But we cook everything over the fire. We don't bring gas with us. I'm super excited because I just got a new percolator that you can cook over the fire with and make your coffee. Because last year we tried using a French press, boiling the water in an aluminum pot, and everything just tasted super metallic and it was really bad. So if you're going camping, don't try to do that. It's awful. But no, I think it's that we, as men, we like to go out and I guess kind of sort of be one with nature, I guess you could say. But I think it's more of, feel like you're out there getting your hands dirty and going on adventures, going on expeditions and stuff, whether that be just going, sleeping outside overnight for a couple of nights, or if it's, like when we lived in Asheville, we used to go hiking all the time down the AT, the Appalachian Trail there. And so that was always a lot of fun too. Just take one or two of the boys out and go climb a mountain,
Go climb a mountain. Yeah. Just every business as usual. Right. No, but I mean, I think as guys, yeah, I definitely experienced that. And I feel like I always have this desire, not being able to get out as much as I would like. I find myself thinking about that and like, oh, it should be great to, go out and really enjoy nature and yeah, basically rough it too. I was kidding about the Winnebago earlier. I mean, I'd love to get out there in a tent and just, I don't know if have you and sort of be one with nature. I don't know if you've seen this show or heard about this show. I think it's on History. We don't have cable, but we do watch like episodes after they come out because they get released on like Netflix or something like that. But there's this show called Alone, and it's actually in its 4th season on History Channel. And basically the whole premise is they send people, individuals out into a remote area, and basically they get 10 items. They get 10 items of their choosing, and that's it. So, I mean, you get like your fire starter, you get your knife, you get like, usually like you can't have a tent, I don't think, because that counts as like too much stuff, but they get like a canopy, and everybody chooses different stuff. But 10 guys go out there, and basically they go out to these areas they usually do, it's Vancouver, British Columbia. It's like the island that's up there, and it's like, I guess the northern point is super remote, but they go up there and they see how long they can stay out there with these 10 items. And it's surprising, like people drop out after like the first day. I think the person who's made it the longest has made it about 60 some odd days in the first 4 seasons. But have you, that show's really cool. I love watching that show because I'm like, man, it'd be so cool to get out there, maybe not necessarily with 10 items, but get out there and be with nature.
I think that'd be really cool. I've heard of this show. I've never seen it though. But when we were living down in Florida, in the middle of the state in Lake Wales, we met a guy down there who likes to go survival camping. And ever since talking to him, I've wanted to try it. Probably when it's a bit cooler out, because it's kind of miserable when it's like 100 degrees. But what he does is he does something similar to that. He'll just go out into the woods with sometimes with just a pocket knife. And he's much more hardcore than I would be, that's for sure. I would probably pack a small bag and go out there. But he'll go out there and he'll grab the Spanish moss and weave a rope out of it and use it, and then use it for lashing tree parts together to make a shelter, and then hunt his own food and everything like that. So he's pretty intense that way. I can't remember his name, but
this guy sounds like he should apply for that show.
He really should, but I think he's really only familiar
because the people who do. Go ahead.
I was saying, I just think he's only really familiar with like how to do that kind of stuff down in Florida, because they wouldn't have that kind of stuff up in Canada.
Well, it's all different, and then but the type of people who do that show are like they're from all areas of the country and of the world, I think. But they all have sort of like the common thread is they either enjoy being out in nature in a survival situation, or they're like a survival training person, or they're like there's been women who've done it and they're like herbalists and all this stuff. And they actually tend to do really well. The women tend to do really well because they are very familiar with like the ecology and everything. Or the ones that have been on there have been very familiar with that. So they're able to like recognize these foods. So whenever food gets scarce, they go out there and they're like, oh, this is like the type of moss you can eat. And it's da 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 da. But it's, yeah, this show is really cool. But your friend, yeah, he sounds like he should be a person to do that. And interestingly, that you brought up, like he knows Florida ecology and he knows how to do that stuff in Florida, because that seems like an issue that people have run into, because 3 of the 4 seasons have been in this at this on this island. It's like I said, it's Vancouver, British Columbia. It's like, I forget the name of the island, but it's the tip of the island. And to a T, people were like, "This is the hardest place I've ever had to go and survive, because it's very wet. Like as anybody who knows about Washington State knows that it rains a lot there, and this place gets way more rain. It gets like astronomical. I think it's like 12 feet of rain a year or something like that. It's a lot of rain. Yeah, it's a lot of rain, and it's on the coast, so the northwest coast is all cliffs and just really rough, the Pacific Ocean. And then they put people there like right at the end of fall, so it's like starting to get cold, so people have to deal with the weather change, and then like the hunting and fishing. Typically fish, or people fish there. But anyways, I'm ranting on about that, but because I love the show. I've watched all 4 seasons.
It sounds pretty cool. I want to check it out. I'm into that kind of stuff. So we're yeah, we're not gonna do anything that hardcore this next weekend. It's just car camping, drive up there, set up the tent, and have fun with friends and everything. So it'll be a good time.
Yeah, that sounds really fun. Well, I would love to do something like that someday too. Hopefully more than once. Yeah. So I actually, the subject we talked about a little earlier, just like the global warming stuff, sort of reminded me of this article, or a couple of articles that I had seen in the past and sort of scrubbed over. But I might just turn on my screen share here so I can show our viewers or people who watch the show later, because we don't have any viewers right now. Surprise. So I'm going to share this, but
it's kind of hard to get viewers on a live stream when you don't announce it to anybody ahead of time.
Or when you just don't. Yeah, there's that too. So yeah, I don't want to be too hard on ourselves. Yeah, gosh, what was I thinking? So this is actually not a live website. I just clipped this article into my Evernote application, so you'll have to excuse that, but it is an actual clipped article. But it's this website, Climate Depot. I have no idea who they even are or how legit they are, but it's just this report from early August, and the headline just reads, "Temperature readings plunge after Australia's Bureau of Meteorology orders end to, quote, tampering." And I'm not going to read this whole article, but the full story basically is that the Australian Bureau of Meteorology got caught tampering with weather records, with temperature records, and all kinds of stuff. Basically, omitting the details to make the data sound like things are warmer, basically to support global warming. Again, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but actually, it's not really that long. Let me just see if I can read a little clip from it here. Just says, recorded temperatures at the Bureau of Meteorology's Thredbo Top automatic weather station have dropped below 10 degrees Celsius this past week after action was taken to make the facility fit for purpose. Yeah. It says later independent monitoring of the Thredbo station by scientist Jennifer Morahasi showed a recording of negative 10.6 degrees Celsius vanish from the record. So they're actually they're omitting the data that they don't want to be shown. And it's just crazy to me that this sort of thing happens. I mean, it's not like this is for science per se. I don't think it's not like a scientific study. But I mean, why would they do that? I mean, is that just because it doesn't support this narrative of global warming that we hear so often, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I think maybe part of it too is that if you expect something is factual or true, then you're going to try and conduct a study that is an evidence of that. And I don't know. I guess if it doesn't prove conclusive, then rather than reevaluating your entire premise, you might try to redo the study, or maybe think you did something wrong, but that wouldn't really explain, falsifying your information.
Yeah. Yeah, like omitting the data, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we hear, I've heard this term before, just lying by omission. So you're
Yeah.
not giving details. And I think we people do that a lot more than they realize on an everyday basis. But when it comes to something like this, it just seems like pretty inexcusable. Um, yeah, and there was another article that I had found maybe about 6 to 8 months ago that talked about there's like these weather sensor buoys that are at different areas in the ocean, and they're supposed to monitor water temperature and air temperature and sort of like also wave height and things like that. And that was another case. I'm just kind of paraphrasing here, but um, that was another case where they were just sort of like omitting data and changing the data to sort of fit a little story or whatever it is that they want to share with people. I don't know, like that just really bothers me. And I know we've talked about it on our other part of the show, um, with our main segments, but like why? What's the point of that? And I see that you have some data from Climate Depot. I mean, why don't you share that?
Well, it's more about the source itself. Whenever I see information from different groups like that, I like to kind of dig into who the groups are. But just for full awareness for everybody who's watching and for both of us as well. It looks like this group, Climate Depot, is a project of CFACT,
Yeah, see that.
and which is I can't remember the name of it. It's basically, it looks like it's a conservative action group. So they obviously have their own spin they're putting on this as well. And frankly, I think that all these groups have their own spin they're trying to put on it. So just be aware of that.
Yeah,
there's probably bias built in.
Well. Yeah, definitely. Whenever we share stuff, we do have that disclaimer of, we don't necessarily support or whatever any of these websites. We're just, this is just a source online. And the funny thing about online sources, or just sources in general, but more so since the internet age, anybody can become an online source. You and I can become an online source and, just disseminate any type of information we want as fact. And, depending on how it gets picked up or who shares it or whatever, it can be, misconstrued. It can be whatever. That's pretty crazy, right? I mean,
yeah, and that's why it's so important for people to check their sources and check data and really do some, serious looking into these people and organizations that they're getting information from. And I feel like most people don't do that, and that's why we have this obnoxious phrase of fake news around everywhere, because people don't check their sources. I remember seeing some data somewhere, I can't remember where it was, but it was something along the lines of the average, like Facebook did a study, I think it was, that the average length of time that an article was viewed that was shared by somebody before it was either liked or shared was only like 12 seconds, which is obviously not enough time to,
barely enough time to read the headline.
Exactly. So that's what people are doing. They're reading these clickbait headlines and they're sharing it, or they're reading the clickbait headlines and liking it or whatever, which gives it more momentum and more of a push. But they're not actually reading it. They're not actually going through it or anything like that. And so I feel like it's bad that this stuff is there, but I mean, these people will have a right to say what they want to say. It's basic First Amendment stuff in my mind. So, I believe in freedom of speech for everybody. Hello. And I just feel like, we need to each individually be diligent in making sure that we, check our facts, check our sources. And, the media is not going to be journalistic about this stuff. So we have to be for ourselves, especially now that we have something as useful as the internet, where we're able to actually, fact check things. And, my favorite is during campaigns and elections and people, President Trump giving speeches or Hillary Clinton in interviews, and they make a statement, and I just be like, hey, guess what? The YouTube, I just found your contradiction in 3 seconds. Congratulations, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, this whole fact checking trend is pretty crazy to me too, but it's almost like a necessary response, or like, I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but it's almost like it's a response to what we're talking about, which is information being disseminated, without, any type of regulation, I guess. And who's going to regulate everything? You can't. I mean,
Well,
so in the
why does it
past,
need to be regulated? That's what I want to know. As
yeah,
far
yeah. So it doesn't have to be regulated, and I think that's good. But at the same time, like in the past, we've had, certain groups, certain organizations, I don't know, New York Times, CNN, name off a bunch of them like that. But those are the main sources of information, if you will, that most people look to. And then now you can look anywhere, and it could be argued that that does just as much harm as it does good, because of what you're saying. Like, people can just find something that sort of fits their, what they believe in, their worldview, and share it. Which, as you're saying, like, the average Facebook user who shares or likes an article views it for 12 seconds before clicking that button. So I think it's just, I don't know if it's like a byproduct of like society being like sort of just like the microwave society, where it's like everything needs to be done quickly, and then it's at the expense of accuracy and truthfulness.
Well, it takes work to look this stuff up, and it takes, really being genuinely curious about something and wanting to learn about it to want to look this stuff up. And so I think that it's easy just to see something and then to quote it or to share it and say, hey, look at this, and think that you're being involved in it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing always. When, like, if it's something entertainment wise, it's not a bad thing. But when it comes to real life issues, I think we need to be a little more diligent about it. But, you mentioned like CNN and Fox News and the big news agencies. People like to go to them. That's where most of them view their stuff. If you go and you read most of the articles on their websites and you listen to a lot of their reporting and stuff, they're not actually doing any fact checking either. They're taking, quotes from undisclosed sources. So we don't know who the sources are. It could be just completely made up individual. It could be somebody who is lying to them. They're using they're talking about like unsubstantiated government sources. They're talking about all these people that we don't have any idea who they're getting their information from.
Like internal White House sources that said such and such a person said such something, right? That type of thing.
Yeah, like that, or somebody in the Pentagon or somebody in, the military or something like that. But they don't cite who it actually is, so we can't double check with who that person is and what their motive might be. But even further than that, most of the time they're not even citing their own stuff anymore. Like, I don't know how many times I've seen an article on CNN that's linked back to the Associated Press, which is linked back to, Reuters or something like that. They're citing each other.
Yeah.
And so they're not actually doing what needs to be done for journalism.
It's a big revolving door of information. And I think it's like we're saying though, it's because everybody wants to be as current as possible. So they're just like, as soon as something surfaces, they're shoving it out there, and they're, as if it's a fact. And like you're saying, there's not necessarily anybody there that's fact checking, and I guess not really doing true journalism, right? Because in the past, before we had all of this, before the internet age, the true internet age, you had the way that people got information, again, is from like a journalist going and doing digging and like going and doing interviews with people who are willing to share their names as being a source or whatever. Sometimes there's anonymous sources, but I think when you're doing that, like that, like kind of like detective work, you're going to have like better quality of information. Whereas if everybody's doing the same thing and just sharing each other's information and nobody has a clue where it all came from, the information could have come from like a dude like me or a dude like you. No, no knock on us, but we're not journalists. We're not, experts in a particular field other than, maybe being a father, but maybe I'm not even an expert in that. But but the point being is, like, it could be anybody, right? I guess that's what we're getting to, huh? Anybody can share anything and it could go viral or become truth.
Well, I think that we need to also define our terms. And I keep bringing this up, and I keep harping on the same point over different subjects, but I think it's really important that we understand there's a difference. Like, we use the term journalism and reporting as if they're synonymous, and I don't really think that they are. I think there's a difference between journalism, reporting and opinion. And a lot of the news media people, like the news media personalities, like the Bill O'Reillys, the Sean Hannitys, the, what's her name? MSNBC.
Oh, Rachel Maddow.
Rachel Maddow. Thank you. I don't know why I forgot her name all of a sudden there. Chris Matthews, these people, is that they're opinion people. They're not reporters. They're not journalists. They're giving their opinion on these news stories that are coming out as they're happening, and so we're getting just their take on it, but they're being represented as journalists or reporters. When I think of a reporter, I think of like Walter Cronkite, who sits there and he reports the news of the day, and
literally reading off a teleprompter, probably.
Exactly, he's just reading the teleprompter. He's just reading what the news is. And then a journalist is somebody who goes out and does that investigative reporting, like you're talking about.
So the journalist is feeding essentially the journalist is feeding the reporter or news anchor the information. Is that sort of like a chain of command that you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I didn't go to school for journalism. I didn't go to school for journalism, so I could be wrong in the way this all works. But the way I understand it and the way I see it, is that the journalist is the guy who goes out and he gets a scoop on a story. He goes out and he digs into it, and he goes out and finds the information, and he'll give you a really deep, in-depth analysis of what's going on in this story. The reporter's going to give you the bullet points of it, and then the opinion guy's going to tell you what he thinks about it. If that makes sense.
But now if I'm understanding this correctly, you're saying some of these personalities, because that's what they are on TV, are becoming all three essentially, where they're doing all of this, and they're being fed by their producers, and they're obviously they have people who do it. They're not doing all of that research themselves because they're very busy. But then you have people like Rachel Maddow and Bill O'Reilly's and all these people who are literally giving you their opinion and telling you what you should think about it before even really giving the nuts and bolts of a story. And that is troublesome.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm not saying that they're doing it all three at the same time. I think they're just doing the opinion aspect of it, but we've allowed people in the media and people in entertainment to treat them as if they're reporters and journalists when they're actually not. And so now we've got this confused mindset to where we think that what they say is genuine reporting and journalism, and their research on a particular subject may have just been from some intern who doesn't have the full facts. They're trying to do schoolwork, and they're trying to keep their internship going. Maybe it's paid or unpaid, we don't know. And no knock on interns. I'm about to be an intern next week, so I mean, I'm not going to say anything wrong with that. But the fact of the matter is that I feel like we've gotten really far away from where we need to be because of what you were talking about, I guess you call it like the microwave era or whatever, this idea that a term I like to use is infotainment, that it's some information, but it's also entertainment. They're trying to keep the ratings up to keep the sponsors happy. And so they have to provide entertainment, which is why opinion's a lot more entertaining than just straight reporting. And so we end up with little bits of information with a lot of entertainment involved in it. So that's just kind of where my thoughts are on it.
I feel like they're borderline actors too. Because I mean, you're like, not that they're playing a part, but that they're selling you something basically. And an actor is always trying to sell the viewer on a role. So they're, and make it believable that they are that person, right? That's because an actor isn't actually that the role that they're playing. So I feel like news personalities do that in a lot of ways. So they're catering to a particular audience. So in the Bill O'Reilly's case, it's a lot of conservative audience. In Rachel Maddow's case, it's a lot more liberal types. And then there's other, extremes and areas in between as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel like it is. Like, it's just you're selling people on not necessarily a performance, but on a story, on a narrative. And whatever narrative fits what they like, then there it is. And obviously, like, the popular flavor now is, a lot of tolerance and a lot of I don't know. But
is it though?
I don't want to get too far into that.
Do you really think it is though? I mean, well, the word yes, but in practice, it doesn't seem like either side is being very tolerant of anyone, really. I mean, aside from people on their own side because they want to win.
Yeah, agreed. It's tolerance within. How would you say that? It's like tolerance within, like, in a box.
They support diversity and everything
within the box that we've provided you, but if you're outside of that box, you cannot be tolerant of those other things. So yes, I agree with you that like a lot of conservatives are not tolerant of liberals and vice versa, right? So then,
Well, here we go. So we go back to words again. The idea of the word tolerance means you tolerate, right? Well, we can tolerate each other and disagree just fine, perfectly fine. But when you get into that aspect of where we are in today, where if you don't agree with somebody, you're automatically considered intolerant, even if you're tolerating them, because we've allowed the term to be shifted to mean no longer simply mean to tolerate somebody's divergent views from your own. It's that we have to accept everyone's views as equally true as our own, which I don't think is appropriate or healthy, to be honest. I feel like it's important that we are able to disagree. But I don't know. It all comes back to this idea of political correctness, and I don't like that the term political correctness has become such a buzz phrase. But if you go back and you look at the source of where political correctness, the term, came from, it actually came from the Maoist handbook in the early years of the communist China, where you were expected as a loyal member of the party to be politically correct. And if you were not politically correct, then you were politically incorrect and you ended up in a camp or in a grave because you had to support the party. You had to support the chairman. And somehow we've taken political correctness to mean you're nice to people. And that's never been what it was supposed to mean.
interesting. Yeah, that term and the definition of what I even understand it to be is quite different. But now that you mentioned that it came from Maoist China, that makes perfect sense, because if you want to be politically correct, you're doing that in order to survive and not end up in a grave or in a camp. And you're basically, what would you call it? Just like sort of marching with everybody else, or going with the flow, I guess would be another term. And that's a big time picture of what goes on these days. So in a way it's like the same thing, but it's not. So I do get you there. And I think that even more supports sort of like the theory that I have, that it really is just actors that are giving us giving us our information, because it's all about keeping people in a certain mindset. Because I mean, honestly, like if you talk to like Joe Schmo or Jane Doe, about a certain topic, they're not going to have, most people that you talk to are not going to have strongly or deeply rooted beliefs to the point where they're going to argue with you about semantics or about like a certain, for example, like illegal immigration or something like that. Most people are going to have like that you would bring that up to, are going to have like a civil conversation with you. They're going to listen to your points and they're going to, give their points, and you're going to be able to have a decent conversation. But I feel like because of social media, because of the internet, we're so used to seeing like these people who just, they're paid to disagree on TV because it's what you do to put butts in seats. I mean, if I'm a producer, I'm going to want conflict. I'm going to want, I'm going to want a push and a pull dynamic to the shows. Otherwise, if everybody's just agreeing and patting each other on the back or whatever, then nobody's going to really want to watch that, because what's the point? We all feel the same way. There's no reason to watch it. So I think in a way that's really what it is. It is actors that are coming against each other. You even watch sports TV and you got the two guys arguing on TV. Those shows became so popular over the last decade or so, where you had like shows like PTI, Part of the Interruption. Now you have other ones on ESPN and stuff, just in the sports arena, where they sit there and banter back and forth about pointless stuff about what athlete's better, or this athlete that was a child abuser, or this athlete that did drugs, or should this athlete have an asterisk next to their name because they took performance enhancing drugs. And there's an argument for both sides. There's no reason to watch that if everybody's just sitting there agreeing, yep, Barry Bonds cheated and took PEDs and he should not, be in the Hall of Fame, which I'm pretty sure he won't be, but that's beside the point. But I get it, is what I'm saying making sense? Like if people are not arguing about something, then nobody's going to want to watch it. And I feel like we sort of like look at that on the TV and we're like, we think we almost, or at least I do, you almost get this idea of like, everybody's like that, but it's not everybody's like that.
Yeah. And it's not, and I think that's the thing that's hard, is like when you spend a lot of time, watching this stuff and you spend a lot of time really engaged in like in politics and in things of this ilk, you know, you end up feeling like you said, like everybody's like this, and they're really not. And that's honestly been one of the things. I kind of taken some time away from the news in the last couple months. It's only been a month. It just feels like a lot longer. But because I felt like I was getting into a kind of an unhealthy place because it's so much all the time, and it makes me so frustrated all the time. And so, you know, I took a step back. You know, I'm keeping up with tech news because that doesn't bother me. I'm just kind of, unless they start talking about AI, and then I'm like, it's going to be the end of the world. But you know, and it might be, I don't know, but you know, I don't. Whenever I see something else in the news about Trump, I just roll my eyes and go away because it's like everything. That's all they're talking about is Donald Trump. That's all they ever like. This thing this past week in Houston with the floods. You know, like I about lost my crap that day, man. I about went off, just chucked my phone across the room because, you know, it was something like 27 trillion gallons of rain fell and destroyed Houston, Texas, the fourth largest city in the country. And, you know, it's doing all this damage and all these people are losing their lives and losing their homes. And they're talking about what shoes Melania Trump wore to Houston.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. I mean, I lived in Houston for about 3 years. So, I mean, I know a little bit about, I mean, I actually went through one of the hurricanes that hit there and actually flooded Houston, not to anywhere near this extent, but it did flood and knocked the power out for a few days. It was gnarly. So I can't even begin to imagine. I think it was like Irene or something like that. It was in 2000, I think it was 2008, 2009, right around then. And I think it was like summer 2008, I believe. But yeah, it was like a direct hit from this hurricane. It wasn't as strong as Matthew. Is it, which one was this? Matthew?
Henry.
Yeah,
right. Matthew was earlier in the summer.
Okay. So it wasn't anywhere near as strong, but gosh, it flooded. Houston is basically built on a swamp, which is itself below sea level, if I'm not mistaken. So it's already very close to the water table. Anytime it rains in Houston at all, there's flooding on the streets to where like you can go around curbs and I'm talking like new infrastructure, new streets that have been built with drains that are not clogged, and the street will flood and like you cannot drive a car through it. And that's almost every time it rains at any type of a significant amount. So it's some of the pictures I saw was like freeways being buried up under, you know, water, parks being buried underwater. In fact, one of those parks, I lived in that park. It's called Herman Park, and it's like this. It's like in the middle of the medical village that they have, which is it's like southwest corner of downtown Houston. And this whole park was flooded. You could see it up to like the middle of the trees. And I'm just like, wow, that is just insane to see that, and to see the images of people, you know, who had to be evacuated and just rescued, really, just losing everything, losing their homes, losing, you know, some people losing loved ones. And that's tough to watch, especially, in a city where, you know, I used to live, and I know a lot of people that still live there. So fortunately, I think my friends are okay. Nobody that I know of was, you know, everybody's still living. So that's good.
That's good.
But it's tough to watch. And yeah, to your point though, why are they trying to figure out and argue what shoes Melania Trump is wearing, or what he said, or did he hold the baby right, or was it the healthy way to hold a baby, or, you know, that he held.
I missed that one. I didn't see that.
I don't even know if that was real.
Oh,
I made that up just on maybe he did do that. I don't know, but you know what I'm saying? Like his presidents hold babies, and they're like, oh, you know. So I'm sure he did something wrong there too. Well, Dan and I are not Trump apologists. We're not, you know, like, ooh, Trump is the man. But what we're trying to say is like, why are we focusing on him still in the face of a situation like this where millions of people have been displaced, millions of people's lives have been affected?
Now, on that note, Chris mentioned that we're not Trump apologists. Anyone who's known me for any length of time, you can go back and read my blog too if you want some proof for it. But I've never been a Trump fan. I do not like the man. I think he's a deplorable human being personally. But you know, I have respect for the office of the president. there might be debate whether or not Trump has that same respect for the office of president. But, I just feel like this is a situation where the media is out to get him so bad that they've completely lost their minds and they completely lost track of everything that is important. Um, I feel like if he does something bad, let's call him on something bad, but let's not nitpick every little thing. Like they got on him about not going to see any of the areas that were devastated by the hurricane when they went the first time. I guess they're going back a second time now. But I'm like, the storm was still going on, and there were still people being pulled out of their homes and pulling
What,
out of their
do they
vehicles.
want him to like wade through the floodwaters or something, or what?
I don't know. I'm like, he's going to get more in the way of the rescue operation than anything else. So I just don't see the point in criticizing him over that. But a side note to correct myself from earlier, I said that Matthew was earlier this year. It was last summer is when it was, because that one actually hit here in Columbia. But I think that, I don't know. One of the cool things that came out of this was getting to see, how much everybody pulled together, in everything.
Yeah.
Seeing all like just the convoys of people, individual citizens, driving, hauling their boats behind their trucks, to go and help rescue people. And nobody called on them to do it. They just knew it was the right thing to do, and they weren't waiting for the government to come fix the problem. They were just going to go take care of it. And that's one of the things that I've really noticed. And, I talked to my wife about this too. And it's interesting. I don't know what it is. I think, honestly, I personally think it's a cultural thing because, you look at bad things that happen and I don't know, like, and they're not, you can't really equate them because they're different circumstances and situations. But like, going back to like the shooting that happened in Ferguson a couple of years ago, and I cannot remember all of them. There were so many that was going on at the time. But like Baltimore, I think there's a riot there. Detroit, a bunch of different things like that were going on. Kind of when like this whole racial thing started getting really, really big, and the responses everywhere else were just rioting and destruction of property and hurting people and everything. And then you come to South Carolina, where you see the shooting where that guy Dylan Roof shot those 9 congregants at the Black church down in Charleston. And man, that was a hard time. That was a hard time for for our family as Christians. And in South Carolina, like, we're all kind of family. And so it's just like seeing that happen, and then seeing the reaction, the response down there was people coming together, marching together in the streets. And then when the flood happened a couple of years ago, I think a lot of people have forgotten about it by now, but 2 years ago, we had that big 1,000-year flood here in Columbia. And I mean, there's still places that are affected by that. Like, the water hasn't completely gone away, and there's buildings that have collapsed from it, bridges that I think they finally finished fixing all the bridges, but it was tons of damage. And it wasn't as bad as Houston, but it was really, really bad here. But everyone just kind of came together, and I see that same thing happening in Houston. And I don't want to say that it wouldn't happen everywhere. It just seems like there's a difference in culture that is causing this. And so everyone sees, Texans as a bunch of rednecks who, drive their big trucks, and they love their guns, and they hate women's rights, and they hate all this other stuff because they're not super progressive leftists and everything like that. But it's like, these people are coming together. They don't care about race. They don't care about, your religion. They don't care about your political standing or anything like that. They see a need to come and help people who are in trouble. And so they're taking their time. They're taking time off of work to drive down to Houston and to rescue these people. I just thought it was a really cool thing to see.
Yeah, I think that's really great, and I tend to, believe that people would come together in any area of the world, and I think it's a very beneficial. Like, for example, like a natural disaster is really bad for everyone, no matter how you slice it. But if there can be something positive gleaned from it, I feel like just about anywhere people would come together and help each other, because it's like at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we're all in this together. And I feel like people in general share that type of a sentiment, and it sort of comes out in times of trial. So I think even if something like that were to hit LA, a place as diverse as LA, I think it would be a very similar situation. And again, I've lived in Houston, and that's a very diverse city, fourth largest city in the nation. It's a very diverse city. I think just every sort of race, color, and creed is represented there. I can say that for a fact. So seeing those reports about people coming together and on a large scale and just sort of helping each other get through it is great to see, and hopefully it can continue to build bridges rather than tear things down. Because I think there's even some negative feelings about like the way that I think it was the mayor of Houston handled this whole thing. Apparently, in the beginning of it, there was before the storm came, the mayor of Houston was tweeting out that people should stay and should not evacuate. This is before the storm had hit, and they were really not. So the storm had already made landfall, and they were getting some rain, but not very much at all. In fact, it was sunny for quite a while, and then they were like, "Yeah, everything's good here. Don't go anywhere. Don't use the hurricane evacuation routes. Basically, don't clog up the traffic." And then, of course, we know what happened after. But everybody makes mistakes. It's easy to point fingers at like this mayor, and who's I guess the first openly gay mayor in Texas. And it's easy for people to point fingers and say this guy's an evil man. He's got an agenda to hurt people or certain groups of people or whatever. And I don't think that's the case at all. Like if he knew what was going to happen, he's not going to keep people from evacuating.
And clearly he was just going with what information he had. But I think the thing is too that I don't think it was a bad choice. I mean, it might have seemed like it at the time, but if you see have you seen the pictures of the highways there? They're completely up to the overpasses. Like if people were like,
if they were clogged. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
I can't remember which storm it was. It was a while ago. It was, I think, Allison or something like that. I remember seeing pictures of that where, like tons of people died on the highways from it because their cars got flooded and they couldn't get out.
Yeah, and certain areas in Houston, there's a freeway called the 59 freeway. It's just that there's a spot where freeways have like they sort of dip down so that they could build bridges across, because they didn't want to build bridges over the freeway, if that makes sense. So they actually dig the freeway down and build like it's just a little bridge going across the top instead of a big one. So they're trying to make things better that way. But it's a death trap. If that area definitely did flood, and it's just walls on both sides for like several miles. And it's a massive freeway, like probably, I don't know, at least six lanes on each side. And I can only imagine if people in their vehicles were stuck there, like it would flood so fast. There'd be almost no way to get out. People would literally have to run for their lives. And the amount of people trying to get in and through parked cars would just be a nightmare. So yeah, I think that's good that in a way what happened, right? People weren't trying to evacuate like crazy, so they were still in their homes and whatnot. Who knows?
Well, and didn't the storm turn at the last minute?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. I thought I heard that it did. I honestly haven't followed this as much as I probably should have.
Apparently, it just sat on top of Houston. That's sort of the gist of what I got. It just sat there and just dumped water.
Yeah, I thought they said that it was supposed to go a certain direction first, and then it just kind of turned really hard all of a sudden and came onto Houston, which if that's what happened, I'm not sure if it was, but I mean, it's kind of hard to plan for that too. I remember I was living in St. Petersburg, Florida, near Tampa in 2004 when, Charlie and all those other hurricanes came through, that really busy hurricane season. And I think you were probably in Orlando at the time, weren't you, Chris, in 2004?
I think so. Yeah, when you guys were in St. Pete. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and we were bracing for that full impact because it was supposed to hit Tampa straight on, and Charlie cut really hard to the right at the last minute and hit Fort Myers and came right up across the middle of the state.
Yeah, I remember that.
I mean, you just can't plan for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that storm basically it looked like somebody took like a giant bulldozer over like a 10-mile wide swath of the state and just went and scraped it clean. That's what it looked like. And I remember because the storm itself wasn't very strong, if I'm thinking of the same storm, but right around like this concentrated area, right around the eye wall, and it was about 10 miles wide, was like in very intense part of the storm, like more intense than most storms are. And it was just super concentrated, and it was just like leveled everything in its path. but everybody
Yeah.
else just got rain, like further out in the storm.
If I remember correctly, I think Charlie was a category 3, but by the time it would have gotten up to Orlando where you were, it was probably down to like a 1 or a 2.
Yeah, if that. Yeah.
But I mean, I remember how bad it was because where where my wife and I met in college is in Lake Wales, which is about 45 minutes to an hour south of Orlando. And when we went in our freshman year, the next year, there was this huge lake when you're driving across the state on Highway 60, and you get into Lake Wales, and I was like, oh, this must be Lake Wales. It's just what it is. It was a farm that had been flooded for over a year.
Oh wow.
And so by the end of our freshman year, when I was going back to St. Pete and she was going back to Bradenton where she was living, we drove out of there and we realized, oh, there's cows there now. So it had finally dried up almost 2 years later. So
fantastic.
Yeah, it's crazy how this stuff works. But I think I speak for both of us that our prayers go out to everyone over in Houston. It's rough. It's rough watching what you guys are going through.
Yeah, definitely. Have you heard about any information about the new Star Wars movie that's coming out?
No, I refuse to look up information because I don't want spoilers.
Okay, well, you know that there's a Han Solo spinoff coming out too, right? I think it's going to be next year. So it's the main installment of the Star Wars movies is coming out this Christmas, for those of you who don't know. And then there's going to be a Han Solo spinoff that's coming out the year following. So that's going to be in 2018. I think it's summer. But I just kind of wanted to get your thought on that Han Solo spinoff, because I was actually talking with my wife about it, and I was thinking logistically how they could do it, because when you have an iconic actor who played a part like that, like Han Solo, it's just so hard like to pull something like that off. And I was just sort of thinking of creative ways to how they could do that. And I came to the conclusion that since they already did him like basically as an old man, and we have that storyline continuing with the main storyline, I feel like they'd have to do him as like a teenager, basically like before he hits 20. Because I think in the original Star Wars, he was about 30 years old. The actor, Harrison Ford, was about 30 years old. So I'm going to assume that Han Solo was around that age. But I feel like that's logistically, like if you want to do it well and not have people just critique the hell out of it, it has to be a person who's like so unrecognizable. In other words, like a stage where he just didn't look like Harrison Ford, but we can pull off a character that could do a similar job who's younger.
I think that they need to, like you said, get a similar looking actor who's younger. I think it would be cool if they did it as like an origin story about how he acquires the Millennium Falcon. That'd be cool to hear. But my concern with it, and this is my only concern, is that I don't want to see it do what Rogue One did. I hated Rogue One. I thought Rogue One was the worst idea ever. I thought it was awful.
What's wrong with Rogue One?
It was stupid. The whole thing was. It was like, we're going to try and fill in the storyline of what happened between 3 and 4, but we're going to do it had a possibility. Okay, let me rephrase. Let me stop. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Chris knows this. Chris is also a huge Star Wars fan. I was
Star Wars purists. We probably both dislike the prequels as much as anybody. Just letting everybody know.
There are aspects of the prequels that I do like, but that being said, I got introduced to Star Wars when I was probably like 10 or 11, when they released the special editions in the theaters of the original trilogy, and I thought those were pretty cool. But then when my mom got remarried, we ended up having access to the originals that I had never seen, and so I started, and they were on VHS, because I'm old, so
yes, that's how I watched them.
I still have them. I need to get a VCR so I can rewatch them.
We had those recorded VHSs on extended play. We literally fit the entire trilogy, the original trilogy, onto one VHS with extended play. I kid you not, 6 hours.
You would have to fast forward so much to get to Empire.
Yeah, that's what we had to do. We had like the little marking, like you fast forward to timestamp 2 hours and 2 minutes to get to the next episode. That's what we did.
Oh man. Well, we had the box set because
I I didn't get that until I was like probably 16. So when
Yeah,
they
I
released,
mean,
I think it was the special editions when they released this, or no, it was before they released the special editions. So the year before they released the special editions, and when the new movies were coming out, they released a box set that was like the black and silver, and then they released
are you talking
the
about the
special edition.
DVDs?
Hmm?
Are you talking about the DVDs?
No, VHS. I had VHS.
I never saw the black and silver box set.
It was like a black. It was Darth Vader, and it was like a box set with 3 VHSs right next to each other. And it was like black and silver.
Okay, yeah, we had the black one that had who was it? I think I can't remember now. I think Vader was on the front of A New Hope, Stormtrooper was on Empire Strikes Back, and Yoda was on Return of the Jedi.
Those are the special editions.
No, it wasn't. They didn't have the
No?
special edition features in there. But anyways, I digress. I mean, I'm a Star Wars fan in to the degree that when I saw when I got the DVD box set and I saw that they replaced the original Anakin at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Forget that.
Oh, when I threw that disc across the room. I was so mad. But I also, I grew up reading the books and reading the comic books and playing the video games. And so there's this whole expanded universe outside of Star Wars that has their story already established. And so for someone like me who grew up with that, that's the story of Star Wars. And so anything that Disney's going to do just kind of makes me mad. And for the record, Boba Fett is alive. I'm just saying.
He has to be.
But, I think that it could be cool. But my problem with Rogue One was that there was no real character development. Like how am I supposed to invest in these characters who are supposed to be here for one film when there's no depth to any of the characters? Like the coolest guy in there is the blind, sorta, kind of not Jedi guy, and then the guy with the big gun. Like I don't even know their names. I don't even remember the name of the main character. It was so forgettable, And I don't know. It almost felt like the coolest scene in the movie was like the low power Death Star attack that just blew up the planet.
That was awesome.
Blew up that section. That was cool.
Single reactor ignition.
And there was a lot of clips from the trailers that looked cool that weren't in the film, like the whole AT-AT attacking. That wasn't in the movie.
It was. There was AT-ATs attacking in the movie.
Where they were charging it?
Yep.
No, maybe I forgot that part.
There was a bunch of dudes on the ground, and then like the X-wings came in through the shield and busted them up.
Oh, maybe I forgot that part. Maybe I need to go rewatch it. And
they were attacking the planet that had the Imperial Archive to get the Death Star.
Yeah. And I also didn't like that they cut out the scene with her like charging after, running, and then all of a sudden the TIE fighter shows up. That got cut out.
I don't remember that.
It was in the trailer. It looked like a really cool scene, but it wasn't in the movie. Gotcha. And there's one other scene that bothered me a lot in Rogue One. Princess Leia's cameo with the CGI. Yeah. I was like, it's completely unnecessary. It didn't look good. It didn't fit the rest of the movie, and it was cheesy. It was so cheesy. She was like, "Hope." Oh, great. Okay. Oh man.
I feel you on that, but I do feel like they did an excellent job on Tarkin. I just got to say. Because the lighting was low. It was like low lighting. He's standing like his face is kind of semi-shadow, and he's got that really distinctive face. And I mean, obviously, like you could tell he was not completely real, but I feel like they did a very good job on him.
It was rough at first. The first couple scenes, I did not like it, but towards the end of the movie, I feel like they either got better or I just got used to it and accepted it. But I felt like towards the end of it, they did a good job with that character. And I thought it turned out really well.
I mean, considering that, I cannot for the life of me remember the actor's name. Very famous actor, that guy. But considering he's been dead for how long, and obviously even if he was alive, he wouldn't look anything like that. I thought it was great because they had no other option. And then with Leia, I think I can't remember if Carrie Fisher had already passed. I think she may have, and that's why or you know what? I don't think she had passed at that point, but they needed her to look. But in that case, wouldn't you like shoot her doing it and then just like super doctor it up?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I've seen movies where like in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Kurt Russell's character, they made him look they made him look younger than he used to be, when he was acting when he was younger. Like
heavy makeup and CGI, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, overall, I liked them. I thought it was a good movie, but with the Han Solo thing, with the Han Solo spinoff, I mean, I feel like they're going to go the same way. I thought it was cool. I thought Rogue One was cool from a standpoint like, hey, we don't have any Jedi in this movie. It's Star Wars, but it's not. But it's not. Like it's Star Wars, but it's not. And I think Star Wars has become synonymous, of course, with the Jedi. That's like the big thing, and that's what all the prequels super focused on. But I think the thing that I enjoyed so much about one of the things that I enjoyed so much about the original trilogy is like the absolute scarcity of Jedi. Like it's a movie about Jedi and about Jedi's redemption, but there's like no Jedi in it. There's like there's like what, 3 or 4 Jedi in the original trilogy or something like that. We got Obi-Wan, we got Luke, we got Darth Vader, and turned bad. He became a Sith and technically the Emperor, but he didn't have a lightsaber. So you got 3 people with lightsabers, right? 3 people in lightsabers in the original movie, and then you go from that to like 3,000 people with lightsabers, and it just kind of loses its like specialness or whatever you want to call it.
It was showing that it was the height of the Jedi Order, though.
Yeah, well, and I get that. I'm not. That's not a critique on that. It's just you still don't have to like make it all about that. But I think that's one of the things I liked about Rogue One. What was they didn't make it all about like force powers and like and Jedi and stuff. They basically took that out of there, and the Force is present, and through that guy that you mentioned, the guy with the staff, the blind dude.
Yeah.
But I think that was cool. I thought that was cool. I thought from an acting standpoint, it was pretty darn good. Definitely a step above or 2 above the prequels as far as acting is concerned, and I think they did a fantastic job with the special effects and the sets. Notwithstanding Princess Leia, but.
Well, I would agree that I like the idea of there not being tons of Jedi, and I don't fault the prequels for having lots of Jedi because, like I said, it's supposed to be the height of the Jedi Order, but it's also a time when the main characters were the Jedi, or Anakin, Obi-Wan, so they were the main protagonists in the story.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to make the point that I'm faulting it, but I was just saying one of the things that made it special, like, you know what I mean? Like when the more special things in our lives are things that you don't experience very often, camping or doing a special date or an anniversary with your wife or something like that is a special thing because you don't do it that often. I guess that's the point I was trying to make.
Right, and that's why one of the things I like about these, the newer movies like Episode 7, 8 was coming, soon, because they kind of harness that original trilogy feel. I just think that I feel like they could have done so much better with Rogue One because it's a story worth telling if they wanted to do it. I just feel like they didn't develop the characters well enough, and it's possible. I mean, you go see movies all the time where there's characters worth investing your time and energy into really relating to or really enjoying. But when you have characters that are, I was more interested in, what was the girl's name? The main
Stardust. Well, that's her nickname. I don't know.
Whatever. See, I told you, it's not even worth remembering.
But I loved her dad, Mads Mikkelsen, the actor who played her dad. He was fantastic.
Yeah, I was more interested in his story than in hers because I felt like there was some real depth there. I would have liked to know more about his role in the development of the Death Star and everything.
Well, don't you find it interesting? And I'm not trying to like suggest anything here, but don't you find it interesting that the two most recent Star Wars movies have had female protagonists? And again, I have nothing against that at all. But like you're saying, there's other people in the movie whose story you want to hear a little bit more about too, rather than just her. Like,
yeah, I'd love it if they would do. I mean, I know, like you said, one of the things that I always thought was special about the Star Wars films is that there's not a ton of them out there, and I feel like Disney's just gonna run it until they have nothing left.
Well, it's the new Avengers, if we can call it that.
Yeah, which is fine. Like, if they're gonna do that, I'd like them to do it well. I'd like them to take their time with it. Honestly, if of all the characters that are in the new trilogy that I would like to see a spinoff for would be Poe Dameron. I love that character. I think he does a great job. I can't remember the name of the actor, but I think he's a great actor. And honestly, you could almost do like a Luke Skywalker with Rogue Squadron or Wedge Antilles with Rogue Squadron aspect or angle with it, which I think would be a lot of fun too. And there's just a lot of things they can do with it, and they could make it really good. And you had mentioned that Rogue One had better acting than the prequels. And that is not saying anything at all. The acting in the prequels was awful. I mean, Hayden Christensen ruined it.
It's not even really acting, if you want to call it that, in the prequels. It's more of just like reading the script. Really, that's not like that's what they were doing.
Well, and it's funny. I used to get mad at Hayden Christensen for ruining the prequels, and then I reasoned it out in my mind that he's just an actor. He's just reading the script. He's doing it the way that the directors are telling him to do. And
Yes.
then I saw
I don't
another
fault the
movie.
actors at all for it again. I think it's directing, and it's George Lucas. Was George
Right.
Lucas?
Well, and then I saw another movie. I can't remember what it was. I saw part of a movie, I should say, that was starring Hayden Christensen. Like he was in a car accident and trying to like regain the use of his legs or something, and it was just as bad. So it's just him.
Well, here we are, like I'm trying to like be nice and like it wasn't him, but it was him. Well, there's a reason he hasn't done that many movies, and it's not just because he did Star Wars and it ruined his career. It's because he's not a good actor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Harry Potter. The actor who played Harry Potter, he sucks as an actor. He couldn't, like, he's just terrible. Like he looked like Harry Potter would look, and that's why they cast him. But he was a terrible, terrible actor. Which, interestingly enough, one of the actors from that movie, that Harry Potter series, went into the Star Wars movie, is the guy who played the Imperial leader. He was like Ron Weasley's like uncle or oldest brother or something like that in the Harry Potter trilogy. And he became the guy from episode 7. He was like the
Snoke?
Imperial. No, not Snoke, but the other guy,
The general guy.
the redhead dude. Yeah, the
Oh,
one
that
who was
dude.
like yelling at everybody.
Yeah, I can't remember his name. The Nazi looking dude.
Oh yeah, he was in. Yeah, he's a Nazi looking guy. He was Ron Weasley's like oldest brother or something like that. I just thought that was interesting. But he actually did a good job. I thought he was like, when he was like doing all that stuff, I felt like his emotion and stuff. I'm like, and I remember watching that movie because that's the first movie, episode 7, that came out since the prequels, right? And I'm just going, it brought a tear to my eye, honestly. I'm just like, this is what it should be. Like, I mean, not saying it's perfect or anything like that, but you're just watching the movie and you're like, this is Star Wars. That's actually being acted. It's actually like done right, like done well. Like that. I went to the screening of that movie at the Chinese theater in Los Angeles, and on this ginormous screen, and it was just amazing.
That was one of the few movies that I've gone to. It was one of the few movies that I've gone to. I think I went on opening day. If it wasn't opening day, it was the day after. But it was one of the first ones that I've actually few that I've gone to see in 3D because I was like, this one's worth it.
Yeah,
It wasn't really worth it.
It was 2 a.m. and I'd work the next day. I was like, screw it. I don't care. I'm not missing on this.
Mm-hmm.
It was totally worth it.
I'm super excited about episode 8 though. I went back and rewatched the trailers today just to freshen up because we're like you, we don't have a TV, and I've just been super busy with school and work and everything. But man, it looks good. I'm interested to see what angle. I feel like they're going to work an angle with Luke, and I kind of wonder if they're going to briefly turn him dark side. Because that happened in the books.
Ooh.
But they've also disavowed all the books, so I don't know. But I could see him going dark for a little while.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I could see that too. And the reason being that he's sort of all like the golden child, if you will. He's like the antithesis to Anakin, who was like the golden boy who was supposed to save the Force. But then like Luke is like his son, that's like a goody two shoes kind of thing. Never, made sure that he saved his dad and all that. But I feel like, I think you have a point there because like everybody's life goes differently, and if you're looking at it from that perspective, he's like, I wonder what the dark side's like. Like I feel like those guys are really powerful. Maybe I should go check it out. And maybe he goes dark side. Because here's my theory about Luke and what's her name, Rey. I feel like my theory is that she's his daughter.
See, here's before you
continue. Like he like sort of canceled out all the rules because he became the head honcho Jedi, and he's like, you know what, you Jedis don't have to be single anymore. It's like priests, Catholic priests, right? If the Pope came out and was like, you know what, forget it, you guys can go get married. You priests, all you Catholic priests, you can get married. Mm-hmm. So I feel like maybe he did something like that, and sort of like with his own agenda, like he found this really hot Jedi chick and just wanted to marry her.
Well, her name is Mara Jade. If you ever read the actual books when they weren't considered canon,
I did not read the books, but see, and that just backs up my point. I feel like
she was a Sith at one point. I think she was like a Sith apprentice or something, and he turned her to the light.
I do remember that because I remember like the games that came out too that had her in it, and then there was like the sort of pseudo Millennium Falcon, the Outrider.
The Outrider was awesome, dude.
That was so cool. That thing had like guns as big as the ship itself, and then like the cockpit was like way outside. It was like a super exaggerated, smaller Millennium Falcon. But yes, my theory is that Rey is his daughter, his long lost daughter. So it's almost like this history repeating itself with, you know, obviously his dad, and she's, you know, he's going to train her. But I don't think that he's going to let on that he's her dad. And I think we're going to be left sort of like in limbo, wondering if he is or not in this movie. And that's part of what I think the cliffhanger is going to have to be. We're going to have some sort of a cliffhanger at the end of this where sort of like Empire, where you're like, wait a second, Darth Vader is Luke's dad? No, he's lying. He's a bad guy. Of course bad guys lie. I think what you said earlier, Luke going bad, Luke going dark, could be sort of that cliffhanger or part of it. And then she has to save him. I don't know. What's your thought on that?
I think we should make predictions.
And then you're like, wait, did Luke really go bad? Did Luke really go to the dark side?
Mm-hmm.
Did this happen? No. And then you got to wait like a whole nother year or two to find out, you know? So
I'll tell you what, how about, this is getting on pretty long. Why don't we, let's go through real quick and let's make some predictions about episode 8. And for all of you who are watching who could care less about Star Wars, I'm sorry, but we're super nerds. So
yeah.
Let's go. I'm gonna take note. Tell me your predictions for episode 8. I'll tell you mine, and then maybe after the movie comes out and we see it, we can do a video and kind of
like
check out. Yeah, do a little recap and see who won.
I feel like we should talk about Star Wars more on our episodes. I love it. I mean, you and I, we could talk Star Wars forever. But yeah, I think that's one of my predictions, at least, is what, you know, what I just said. I think Luke really is Rey's dad, but I don't think we're going to find out definitively in this particular episode 8. I just don't think they're going to. If they're smart, they're not going to let us know, but they're going to sort of like have it out there, dangle it out there like a little carrot for the audience. And I think there's going to be other little sort of things like that too. I think second is we obviously Star Wars story arcs, trilogies are always redemptive trilogies. So somebody has to be redeemed. In this case, it could be somebody's. And I think that what's his name? Adam Driver. Kylo Ren, yeah. I feel like this is partly his redemption story. I think it's great that they didn't kill him off like they did with Darth Maul in the first one, who was a great from a like bad boy standpoint, but he had no character. But I think that this is a Darth or a Kylo Ren redemption story. He definitely does go darker. He killed his dad so that he could, you know, get more power and go down that route. So he's not coming back anytime soon. Definitely not in this episode. But he will be redeemed, I think, by Rey. I would think so. That's my number 2 prediction. And number 3, I think the Rebel Alliance, or whatever they're called now, the Resistance. The Rebel Alliance was the originals. I think the Resistance is just going to get into some really deep doo-doo, and it's going to, you know, like their home base is going to be under attack, or like, I don't know, the new Empires. I heard that there's going to be possibly a new Death Star being built, so it's like, could this?
I hope not. I really hope they don't do another Death Star.
Is the Empire really that unoriginal? They just keep building Death Stars and planets with super weapons to like blow stuff up. Can't they come up with another way for like total annihilation, or to keep their?
Well, again, if you had read the books, there was something called the Sun Crusher, which would destroy the sun and create a singularity.
Yes, continue. I did hear about that. And my daughters are here, so I'm gonna have to go pretty soon. But did you have any predictions?
That Luke goes dark. First off, I think that he's gonna fall to the dark side. I do not think that Rey is his daughter. I think that Rey is somebody else's daughter.
Qui-Gon's daughter. He has Qui-Gon hair.
That would be really weird. Hi there, little one.
But he was kind of a rebel, right? Hippie.
Yeah, I guess so.
He went against the order to like get Anakin trained.
That's true. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure whose daughter she is. I don't think she's Luke's. I think that would be too predictable. I agree that Kylo Ren is probably going to be redeemed, and I See, I have ideas of how it's going to end, and at the end of episode 9, so I can't go that far yet, I guess. But
why not? Why not?
I think that Rey and I think that Kylo Ren gets redeemed, as you said, and they manage. And I think that those two have to take on Luke and Snoke.
Ooh,
That would be awesome.
dude.
That would be really awesome. Or maybe they turn Luke back and they have to take on Snoke, and it takes all three of them to take him down.
Hey,
also awesome.
Any theories on Snoke? I feel like he's actually like a small dude. Like, you know how he's like super giant in that hologram, and you're like, oh, this is a big guy. What if it's like super ironic and he's just like this really small creature, like Yoda,
or like Dobby?
He kind of looks like that. He does look like Dobby, like a really creepy, even creepier Dobby.
Yes,
creepy evil Dobby.
But predictions, I think that Luke goes dark, that Rey is going to have to branch out on her own. That she's going to, it's the second episode. It's going to be a cliffhanger where, they're in trouble. Okay. I'm going to say that Finn does not wake up yet.
So he's still in a coma or whatever.
Yeah, because you see that in the trailer that he's still he's in the pod. He's still in his coma. I don't think he wakes up until episode 9.
Oh, so they just kind of like get rid of him.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
he's in the cast. He's definitely in the cast. So maybe, but maybe it's just because he's laying in the pod and they like cut to him every.
I mean, it's possible that he wakes up in the end. They saved Mark Hamill until the very end of 7.
Yeah.
But I also think that, like you said, the rebel or the resistance are going to get into trouble, to the point to where they have to, have a very small group that regroups, somewhere far away to stay hidden, and then they all have to figure out how to get in communication with each other again.
Speaking of Mark Hamill, though, and want to know your thoughts on this. He wasn't exactly like a spectacular actor, even in the original trilogy, or not going like, winning any Academy Awards or anything like that. So I'm wondering how involved you think he's going to be in this movie, because I feel like his involvement's going to be, it's going to be sort of like the frosting on the cake. There's going to be, it's still Rey's story. It's still these it's still Oscar Isaac's story, Poe Dameron, and that sort of those guys. I feel like, they're going to throw like little dashes of Mark Hamill in there, but he's not going to be sort of like a central figure, because I almost feel like he really couldn't carry it. I mean, granted, he sort of did, and he really did in the original trilogy, but there was like that threesome of him and Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford that carried the movie. It wasn't just him. And honestly, it was really Harrison Ford that carried most of it with his character. But I just don't think he can carry like a character for a whole movie like that. They can't put that weight on his shoulders. What do you think?
I think he'll do okay. I want to see if he can still fight, to be honest. Because I mean, he's old now. He's not as young as he used to be. So he's gonna have to. We're gonna have to see if he can actually move around the way he used to.
I'll have to go old Obi-Wan, just like in episode 4.
That's what I was gonna say. I think that his
stand there with the lightsaber and just like kind of wave it around a little bit and block.
I think he'll do better than that. But I think that what we're gonna see is, I think we're gonna see him as more of like more like in the way that like an Alec Guinness was in episode 4, where he was kind of mentoring and teaching, but he didn't have a huge active role as far as the action scenes go.
I totally agree. That's what I think. It's funny because like history repeats itself, right? At least in these movies.
Maybe that's the theme they're going for, where people complained about episode 7 being like a rehash of being a rehash of 4, because it's like another Death Star, the same story over and over again. And maybe that's what they're going for, is the
formula that works.
Well, not necessarily a formula that works, but maybe my thought has always been that they were trying to show the fans that they were going to do it right. But at the same time, I think that maybe what they're trying to do is trying to do this underlying story of history repeats itself. Or maybe I'm just thinking too much into it.
Maybe that's like the whole Star Wars galaxy. His history just repeats itself over and over and over again. Because I mean, you play the games like Knights of the Old Republic, and it's like 5,000 years previous to the events of Star Wars, the original Star Wars, and it's like pretty much the same story arc, bad, Jedi versus the Sith, and stories of redemption. But really, aren't all movies? A lot of movies are that, sort of a story of redemption and coming through a difficult time. So it's like at the end of the day, your options are kind of limited. It is predictable to a certain extent. We can't predict. I feel like it's really difficult to predict the twists that are going to come because you can kind of throw anything in there. But as far as like the general outcome, yeah, I think the consensus is Kylo Ren gets saved and everything gets hunky dory by episode 9. But episode 8, which one is gonna definitely end with some cliffhanger?
I don't know, dude. I want to see episode 9 just be this epic showdown, of like, I honestly, the more I think about it, I think it'd be really cool if it was like, Kylo Ren turned back to the light and him and Rey had to stop Luke and Snoke. And then there's just like this epic battle above some planet. I don't even care what planet it is. You can blow up the planet for all I care. But I just want to see, Poe Dameron fly in circles around all these other ships and everything. I think it'd be really cool.
Wasn't that a line from that Star Wars gangster rap? We'll blow your planet up.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. That was great.
You remember that? I used to watch that over and over again. The guy who did that was a genius. That's awesome.
True. That is right. Yeah, dude, it's been we were shooting for 30 minutes. I think we went like an hour and a half. So
yeah, Star Wars got us carried away, I think.
That's true.
I knew it would. That's why I brought it up.
All right. Well, I think we should probably go ahead and call it for the night. My wife's going to be home from work soon, and it sounds like your wife probably needs your help out there. But man, it's been a lot of fun. We haven't done an episode in like a month. So for those of you who haven't listened to the last update I did, we're going to be back October 7th with the regular episodes. We're thinking about doing it a little differently now. So we're going to probably, we're thinking about recording the episodes ahead of time and then doing the unscripted show live. So if you want to be part of the live one, we'll probably stick with doing unscripted, which should stick to around 30 minutes theoretically. But for now, this is where we're at. We're just taking a little break for the summer. Got a lot of stuff going on. So Chris, is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
Nope. Good here.
All right, cool. Well, if anyone wants to check out any of Chris's stuff, it's mystery.wordpress.com. Is that your other site?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact address at the moment, but
all right, we'll link it in the show notes for you. Yeah, hope that everyone's enjoyed it. And if you guys are interested in any more of any podcast or anything like that, we'll upload this to the podcast as well. And actually, I started the Ancient Abandoned podcast over the last couple of weeks. If anyone's interested in checking it out, so I've got 2 episodes out now. It's on iTunes, it's on Google Music, and all the other ones that are out there now. So all the big ones. So if you're interested, check it out. And if you like what you hear on the Two Wise Guys or the Ancient Abandoned one, just be sure to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. Leave a good review, and that'd be awesome. So, Chris, if you don't have anything to add, until next time, we will see you all later.
All right, guys. Until next time, we're signing off. Take care and have a good night.